All right, let's get some insight. We're now joined by Susan Sullivan. She is a professor of law and politics at Temple University. She joins us from Philadelphia. Susan, great to have you on the show. All right. Democrats have spent years pledging to address the issue of gun control, but what we're actually seeing now is how little that they've actually accomplished since taking control. I mean, do you think that this is mainly because that they don't have the majorities that they need or want, or the party's agenda has been essentially side railed or roadblocked by internal divisions?
Well, good questions. So many issues that come into play here. Certainly, this is not an issue that is supposed to be politicized, right? These tragedies hit home everywhere. There are a couple of obstacles to enacting any effective, meaningful legislation. One of which comes down to money. The gun lobbies are very powerful. They provide a lot of support. They provide a lot of financing for election campaigns, for election advertising, and the politicians need that money, irrespective of their party affiliations. So cynical as that seems, that is a major contributor here. The second issue here is that apart from American culture being really ingrained here, Americans really believe they have not just the desire to own guns, to protect themselves and such, but the right to actually purchase, buy, and own a gun. And it is that right that the courts are protecting. And the government here is unable to enact legislation that would violate those rights that are so fundamentally upheld by the court here.
Susan, I feel that we're perhaps maybe tone deaf to some of the facts on this issue because, I mean, the country has, for a lack of a better way of putting it, become fixated on issues like terrorism and mass shootings, as well as civilians killed by officers. Yet nearly 2/3 of annual gun deaths in the country are suicides. Why isn't this becoming part of the discussion?
Well, it's very interesting because, as you're absolutely correct, approximately 55% now of gun deaths in this country are suicides. And one doesn't hear about this because the parents of grieving suicide victims are not typically the people who are the most vocal. It is the parents and families and friends of those who are gunned down in cold blood. Psychologists differ on why this is in fact the case. From a practical standpoint, it is very easy to pick up a gun and shoot yourself. If you decide to kill yourself by jumping off a bridge, you have to get in your car, you have to drive somewhere, you have to find somewhere to park. There are opportunities, I suppose, to reconsider. But if somebody is drunk, is high, impulsively picks up a gun and shoots themselves, there's no going back. But it is very interesting. People do ask themselves, why is it that the families of suicide victims are less vocal in demanding some kind of meaningful gun control here?
Okay. The right to bear arms in the United States resonates particularly strongly, especially when compared to other Western countries. In your expert opinion, now, what do you think could be next in terms of gun law reform in the country?
Well, I have to say, I think there's going to be very little gun reform coming forward. As I say, the United States has a written constitution. The Second Amendment specifically addresses an individual's right to bear arms as the Supreme Court has interpreted it. And unlike other Western democracies, in the United States, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter of what is valid and what is not. They can literally overrule the enactments by Congress. So even though there may be legislation, they may attempt to introduce effective gun control and various gun protection measures. It is unlikely that the US Supreme Court is going to allow those laws to go into effect and would instead invalidate them as violating the rights guaranteed by the US Constitution. The only way to really get around that would be to amend the Constitution. There are only 27 amendments in the entire history of the US Constitution. It began pretty quickly with 10, and since then, over 200 years, there have been 17 amendments. So it seems unlikely that we're going to be seeing any meaningful gun control measures anytime soon.
Okay. Susan Sullivan, thank you very much for joining us here on the NewsHour. I do appreciate the analysis.
My pleasure.